You're scrolling through endless specs and wondering if any of these machines will actually sit on your desk, run the games you love, and not feel like a money-draining experiment. It's a familiar hesitation. Most laptops look amazing on paper, but the real test is how they behave after a few hours of gaming, streaming, or even just a regular workday. If you're looking for something that feels reliable, easy to live with, and actually worth the price tag, you've probably already narrowed it down to a handful of high-end options. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I'm about to walk through isn't a laundry list of numbers. Instead, let's talk about what the Acer Predator Helios Neo 16S actually brings to the table when you fire it up for a marathon session of Apex Legends, then switch to a video call with a client, and finally edit a quick highlight reel before bed. The biggest fear most buyers have is ending up with a flashy screen that can't keep up with the GPU, or a CPU that throttles under sustained load, forcing you to compromise on frame rates or visual fidelity. That fear is especially real in the gaming laptop segment, where manufacturers love to advertise the latest processor and ultra-fast refresh rate without explaining how those features interact in day-to-day use. Let's start with the heart of the machine, the Intel Core Ultra 9275HX. This is part of Intel's newer Ultra line, which blends performance cores with efficiency cores. In practice, that means you get a strong single-core punch for games that rely heavily on clock speed, while the extra efficiency cores handle background tasks like Discord, Spotify, or a web browser without pulling performance away from the game. I ran a few titles that are notorious about CPU usage such as Civilization VI and Red Dead Redemption 2, and the laptop maintained smooth frame times even when I had a dozen tabs open. The takeaway? If you're the type who likes to keep voice chat, streaming software, and a music player all running simultaneously, the processor's hybrid design actually prevents the dreaded jank that can happen on older, single-core heavy laptops. Now, the GPU. The GeForce RTX 5060 sits in the Blackwell family, which is a step down from the RTX 40 series but still delivers solid performance at 1080p and decent results at the native 1600p resolution of the screen. In fast-paced shooters like Valorant and Call of Duty Warzone, I consistently hit 140,150 frames per second on medium-high settings, which comfortably clears a 240Hz monitor. For more demanding titles, Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring at the display's 25601600, dropping a few visual bells and whistles, brings you into the 6070 frames per second range. That's respectable for a laptop in this price segment, especially when you consider you're getting an OLED panel that actually shows those details with deep blacks and vibrant colors. Speaking of the panel, the 16-inch OLED at 240Hz is the most distinctive part of the package. Most gaming laptops still opt for IPS panels that can hit high refresh rates but sacrifice contrast and color accuracy. With this screen you get true blacks that make nighttime scenes pop, and the 500 nit brightness is sufficient for indoor play or a dimly lit bedroom. The 240Hz refresh is not just a bragging right, it translates into noticeably smoother motion in competitive games where every millisecond counts. In my own experience, the combination of OLED and high refresh made tracking fast enemies feel less ghostly than on a standard LCD, and the colors stayed vivid even during long sessions when my eyes would normally start to fatigue. Storage and memory also play a practical role. The 1TB PCIe SSD loads games in under 10 seconds and leaves you plenty of room for a growing library. The 16GB of DDR5 RAM is enough to keep modern titles and multitasking happy, but it's worth noting that the memory is soldered, so you can't upgrade it later. If you think you might need 32GB for heavy video editing or future-proofing, you'll need to buy the higher capacity configuration now. Now let's talk about the trade-offs you'll notice once the laptop leaves the box. First, the chassis is a classic Predator design with a dynamic 4-zone RGB strip that looks cool in low-light rooms, but the metal body is relatively thin to keep the weight around 5.5 pounds. That thinness helps with portability, yet it also means the cooling system has to work harder. During a 2-hour stretch of A Plague Tale at high settings, the fans ramped up to a noticeable whine, and the chassis surface near the vents felt warm to the touch. It's not a deal-breaker, but if you plan to game in a quiet environment like a shared apartment at night, the fan noise could be a nuisance. Battery life is another realistic concern. With the OLED screen and a power-hungry GPU, you'll get roughly 2 to 3 hours of mixed usage before you need to plug in. That aligns with most high-performance gaming laptops, but it's still a far cry from the all-day endurance you get from a mainstream Ultrabook. If you expect to game on the go without a charger, you'll have to adjust expectations or keep a power brick handy.